My name is Sarah. I'm 34 years old. And for most of my life, I've been the daughter my family forgot to believe in. This past March, I sent my family the most important invitation I'd ever written. My dad's response? He actually chuckled and said I was just a school teacher. My brother said he had plans, some birthday dinner for a friend he barely knew. And my mom? She didn't even type a single word back. She just double-tapped my brother's message with a little heart react and kept scrolling. I sat there staring at my phone for a long time that night. Then I typed back 4 words, "That's fine. No worries." But here's the thing, what they didn't know, what none of them could have seen coming, was that 72 hours later my dad would be sitting in a packed restaurant, fork halfway to his mouth, watching his phone screen go pale as a ghost. Because right there on that screen, in front of millions of viewers, was me. Before I keep going, if this story is hitting close to home for you, go ahead, subscribe and hit that like button, but only if you genuinely feel it. And drop a comment. Where are you watching from right now and what time is it? I love knowing who's out there. Okay. Let me take you back, about 6 weeks before that night, to the afternoon a single envelope changed my entire life. It was a Wednesday in early February. Kind of afternoon where the sky is that flat, cold gray and you can see your breath on the walk to the parking lot. I just finished erasing the last whiteboard in room 109 at Riverside Middle School in Cincinnati, Ohio, my classroom, my second home for going on 9 years now. One wall was covered floor to ceiling with thank you cards from students. Drawings in crayon, notes in marker, one in glitter glue that still shed sparkles every time I walked past. Kids who had never once written a letter in their lives until they sat in my class. I was grabbing my tote bag when my phone buzzed. Mom. Sarah, honey, I just wanted to let you know your brother Derek won his promotion today. The big one, Regional Director of Operations. Your father is over the moon. He's already called your Uncle Pete and Grandpa Joe. I genuinely smiled. That's awesome, Mom. Tell him congrats. We're doing a big dinner Saturday to celebrate. You know how your dad gets. Oh, and before I forget, there was shuffling on her end. Actually, sweetie, Derek's on the other line. I've got to grab it. We'll talk later, okay? Sure, Mom. I actually had something I wanted to. Dial tone. I stood there a second. Then I looked at my desk. There was an envelope sitting right there, thick cream-colored paper, an official government seal pressed into the corner. I'd been carrying it around for 3 days, waiting for the right moment to tell my family. I picked it up and ran my thumb over the embossed letters one more time. United States Department of Education, National Teacher of the Year Selection Committee. Inside was an invitation that most teachers will never receive in their entire careers. I was one of 5 finalists in the whole country. The ceremony would be held in Washington, D.C. The Secretary of Education would present the award personally. PBS and C-SPAN would both broadcast it live. I looked at my wall of thank you cards. At least somebody thought I mattered. This wasn't the first time I'd been cut off mid-sentence by my own family. 4 years back, at my master's degree graduation, my parents showed up during the last 20 minutes. Traffic was brutal, they said. But that same weekend, I overheard my mom on the phone with Aunt Carol. We made it just in time to catch Derek's company awards banquet Friday night. You should have seen him up there. They had left my graduation early. For his work party. They never told me. On my 31st birthday, not one person in my immediate family called. 3 days later, Mom texted, "Oh gosh, was your birthday last week? Time flies. Let's do brunch soon." We never did. Last Christmas, my brother announced he'd been promoted to team lead. Dad popped open a bottle of wine he'd been saving for 10 years. When I mentioned that my students had organized a community food drive that collected over 800 pounds of groceries for local families, he nodded vaguely and asked Derek what his new salary package looked like. I learned to stop expecting things. But this letter, this was different. I read it again, slower. Dear Ms. Mitchell, we are honored to inform you that you have been selected as a finalist for the National Teacher of the Year Award. Your nomination was submitted by a distinguished educator whose identity, per tradition, will remain confidential until the evening of the ceremony. A distinguished educator. Someone had put my name forward for the highest honor in American education. Someone believed in me that much. My chest felt warm. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe if my family saw the official letterhead, the gold seal, the words Washington, D.C. and Secretary of Education, maybe then they'd finally get it. I opened the family group chat and started typing. A week passed. I rewrote that message 13 times. First draft was 3 paragraphs long, explaining what the award was, how rare the nomination, how less than a handful of teachers per decade ever even get considered. I deleted it. Too desperate. The second was way too short. Hey y'all, got nominated for an award. That felt like I was already apologizing for asking. By version 13, I'd stripped it all the way down to what mattered. Hey everyone. I have some news I've been wanting to share. I've been selected as a finalist for the National Teacher of the Year Award. The ceremony is March 22nd in Washington, D.C. It would honestly mean the world to me if you could be there. I've attached the official invitation from the Department of Education with all the details. Love, Sarah. I attached the PDF, the one with the gold embossed seal, the formal language, the line that explicitly named the Secretary of Education as the presenter. My thumb hovered over send for almost 2 full minutes. What if they said no? What if they laughed? What if nobody responded at all? But what if, just this once, they showed up? I hit send. Then I waited. Made dinner. Checked my phone. Graded papers. Checked my phone. Watched part of a show I couldn't tell you the name of right now. Checked my phone. Nothing. By 11 p.m. the message showed read by all 3 of them. I fell asleep with my phone on my pillow, screen facing up. 7:18 the next morning I woke up to a notification. My heart jumped straight to my throat. 3 gray dots under my dad's name. He was typing. The dots disappeared. Reappeared. Disappeared again. Then his message came through. 9 words, a teacher award? I'm not flying to DC for that. I read it 3 times. Each time it landed a little heavier. Before I could even process, my brother Derek's message popped up. Sorry sis, Kayla and I have dinner reservations that night. Already paid the deposit. You get it, right? He added a thumbs up emoji. He actually sent a thumbs up. I watched the screen, waiting for Mom to say something. Anything. To push back even a little. To at least say congratulations, honey. Instead, a small notification appeared. Linda Mitchell liked Derek's message. That was it. 1 tap. No words. Just her quietly co-signing my brother's rejection. My chest got tight. That old familiar ache. The one I'd been carrying since I was 9 years old, watching Dad frame Derek's Little League trophies while mine sat in a shoebox in the closet. I picked up my phone, set it down, picked it up again. Then I typed back, that's fine. No worries. I didn't cry. I'd stopped crying about my family a long time ago. Instead, I felt something harder settle in, a kind of quiet resolve. I would go to Washington alone. I'd sit in that audience by myself. And whether I won or lost, I would know I'd earned my place there. My phone buzzed again. One more message from Derek. Honestly, Sarah, have you ever thought about switching careers? Teaching kind of has a ceiling, you know? Just saying I care about you. I turned my phone face down and left it there. That evening I sat in my apartment, a 1-bedroom in an older building that Dad once called a starter place, right? And Derek described as cozy in a very modest way. I stared at my master's degree hanging on the wall. Summa cum laude. 4 years of night classes while teaching full-time. Dad had missed that graduation too. My phone rang. I almost let it go. but the screen said Grandma Ruth. I answered immediately. Sarah, sweetheart. Her voice was the kind of warm that makes your shoulders drop 3 inches. I heard about your nomination. I paused. How did you? Oh, word gets around in education circles, you know how I am. I could hear the smile in her voice. Did you tell your parents? The silence answered for me. Ah, she said softly. She understood without me saying a word. Did you read that nomination letter carefully, sweetheart? The whole thing? I laughed a little. Of course I did. Like 5 times. Good. Tell me what it said about the nominator. Yeah, it said the nominator wanted to stay anonymous, and that they'd only ever nominated 7 teachers in their whole career. A beat of silence. Grandma, how do you know what my letter says? My grandmother, Ruth Calloway, had spent 37 years in education, 28 of them as a principal in the Columbus City School District. Before she retired, she'd taken 2 schools that were on the state's watch list and turned them into models that other districts came to study. In education circles, people knew her name. I'd never fully understood what that meant until right then. Let's just say I have some old friends on that committee, she said quietly. My breath caught. Grandma, I'll be at the ceremony, Sarah. Front row. Her tone had that finality that meant don't argue. You don't have to fly all the way to. I'll be there. I was quiet for a moment. You said something earlier about truth finding people when they least expect it. What did you mean? She paused just a beat too long. Just focus on your speech, sweetheart. I'll see you in Washington. Call ended. I sat there, heart racing, staring at the ceiling. What did she know that I didn't? 2 days before my flight to Washington, Mom called out of nowhere. Sarah, we're doing Sunday dinner. Your father wants the whole family together. Your brother has news he wants to share. I went. I'm not totally sure why I went. Maybe some part of me still hoped. I arrived at my parents' house at 6:30. The dining room was set up with the fancy dishes, the ones that only came out for real occasions. Candles on the table, a nice bottle of red already breathing on the sideboard. Derek sat at one end of the table looking like he'd already won something. Sarah. He stood and gave me a side hug. Glad you could make it. My dad raised his glass before the food even hit the table. Before we eat, I want to toast to Derek, who just accepted the regional director position. The youngest person in his company to hold that title. To Derek, Mom echoed, her eyes practically glowing. Congratulations, I said, and I meant it. That's a big deal. Thank you. Derek smoothed the collar of his shirt. It's been a long time coming. Mom leaned toward me. See, Sarah, that's what focus looks like. Real results. I put my fork down very carefully. Dad turned to me. So, Sarah, what's new with you? Still doing the 7th grade thing. 7th and 8th. Right. He waved his hand like he was shooing a fly. And that little ceremony you mentioned. Is that still happening? It's this Wednesday. The 22nd. Ah. He picked up his wine glass. Some kind of teacher recognition thing. It's the national teacher of the... Right. He nodded the way people nod when they're not really listening. Derek tilted his head with that smile I'd known my whole life, the one that was never quite as friendly as it looked. So, what does a middle school teacher actually pull in these days, if you don't mind me asking? I knew exactly where this was going. Around $54,000. He glanced at his girlfriend Kayla across the table and barely suppressed a smirk. Sarah, that's less than my monthly bonus. Kayla shifted in her seat, visibly uncomfortable. Dad nodded gravely, like a doctor delivering bad news. This is what I've been trying to explain for years. You're smart, Sarah. You could have gone into finance, into tech, into literally anything. Instead, Instead, I chose something I love. My voice stayed even. Love doesn't build a retirement account, Dad said. My bills are paid. Barely. Derek muttered it just loud enough. Then Kayla, quiet Kayla, who I'd met maybe 5 times, set down her fork and said, just loud enough for me to hear, "For what it's worth, my 2nd grade teacher is the reason I went to college. Changed my whole trajectory." She looked at me. "I think what you do matters." I filed that away. The first honest thing said at that table all night. I left after dessert. Barely touched my food. The door I turned back once. Oh, by the way, the Department of Education covers all travel expenses for the finalists. So don't worry about me flying economy. Dad's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. First class, actually. I kept my voice pleasant. And the Secretary of Education presents the award personally. C-SPAN and PBS both broadcast it live. But you'd know that if you'd read the invitation. Nobody spoke. Congratulations again, Derek. Genuinely. I pulled on my coat. Enjoy your celebration. I drove home in total silence. No music, no podcast. Just the road and my own heartbeat. Then my phone lit up on the passenger seat. An email notification. Ms. Mitchell, this is Andrea Cole from the NBC Education Desk. We would love to request a brief sit-down interview ahead of next week's ceremony. Your nomination has generated significant national interest. Please respond at your earliest convenience. NBC. My family thought I was going to some little feel-good luncheon. They had absolutely no idea. And for the first time, I realized I didn't want to tell them. Some things are better discovered than delivered. Monday morning. My suitcase was by the door, one clean, practical bag. My speech, which I'd rewritten 41 times. A dress I'd bought specifically for this. My principal, Dr. Carmen Okafor, called just as I was locking up. "Sarah." Her voice was full. "The whole school is rooting for you. We set up a watch party in the gymnasium for Wednesday night." "Dr. Okafor, you really don't have to." "Are you kidding? Riverside Middle has never had a National Teacher of the Year finalist. This is history for us." She paused. "Sarah, do you know who nominated you?" The letter said they wanted to stay anonymous. I've been in this field for 28 years and I hear things. Her voice dropped slightly. "The woman who put your name forward, she's a legend. She's only ever nominated 7 teachers her entire career." My pulse spiked. 7? Every single one won. Who is she? I can't say for certain. But Sarah, she spent nearly 4 decades as a principal. The Secretary of Education has called her personally for policy input. Whoever nominated you didn't do it lightly. I hung up. My hands were shaking just slightly as I picked up my bag. My phone buzzed. Text from Grandma Ruth. "Safe travels, my girl. Can't wait to see you. I have a few old friends who are very eager to meet you." Old friends. What was she planning? The flight to Reagan National felt surreal. First class meant warm nuts before takeoff and a seat that fully reclined. A flight attendant who called me Ms. Mitchell like I was someone who mattered. I wasn't used to being called that. A black car was waiting at arrivals. The driver held a sign with my name. He took my bag, opened the door, and drove me to the Willard Intercontinental, a hotel I'd only ever seen in movies about presidents and senators. Marble floors. Crystal chandeliers. Staff who greeted me by name. "Ms. Mitchell, welcome. Your suite is ready." Suite. Not room. Suite. That evening, I met the other 4 finalists at the reception. James Okonkwo from Houston, a math teacher who'd built a coding program from scratch in a school with no budget and no lab equipment. Lily Chen from Portland, an ESL teacher helping refugee children find their footing in a country that didn't always make it easy. Roberto Garza from San Antonio, a special ed teacher who developed a breakthrough communication system for nonverbal students. And Maya Thornton from Baltimore, a history teacher who turned a crumbling school library into a genuine community research hub. We were all nervous, all humbled, all a little bit overwhelmed by the marble and the chandeliers and the name tags that said finalist. "Can you believe this?" Lily whispered, eyes wide, glancing around the room full of education secretaries and university presidents. "Yesterday I was correcting spelling tests." James laughed, that relieved, slightly disbelieving laugh of people who've spent their whole careers being underestimated. Then someone handed me a program for the next night's ceremony. I scanned the attendee list: committee chairs, state education commissioners, former cabinet members, nonprofit leaders. And then I saw it. Guest of honor, Ruth Calloway. Not guest. Not attendee. Guest of honor. My grandmother wasn't just coming to support me. She was being honored herself. I found her in the hotel lobby the next morning. She was sitting in a wingback chair near the tall windows, morning light catching the silver in her hair. At 81, she still sat like a principal. Back straight, hands folded, the kind of quiet confidence that doesn't need to announce itself. She rose when she saw me, and her hug was fierce. "My girl," she whispered. "My brilliant, stubborn, beautiful girl." We settled into chairs side by side. She took my hands in hers. "I've been watching your career since the day you walked into your first classroom," she said. Her eyes were already glistening. "Every student you fought for. Every parent who told me you stayed 3 hours after school to help their kid. Every colleague who said you made them want to be better." I barely got the words out. "You collected stories about me?" "I collected evidence." She squeezed my hands. "6 years ago, I wanted to nominate you. But you weren't ready yet. You hadn't fully found your voice. So I waited." My throat tightened. "The nomination letter mentions 7 teachers," I said. 37 years. All 7 won. She nodded. "I don't put names forward lightly. When I recommend someone, people listen, because they know I don't do it for anything other than the truth." "Grandma, what's happening tonight?" "It says you're the guest of honor." "Tonight," she said, "a former student of yours will speak about you. I arranged for him to be here. Someone whose life you changed." "Who?" Her eyes sparkled. "You'll see. Now go practice your speech, sweetheart. You're going to need every word of it." She kissed my forehead and shooed me off like I was still 12 years old. Meanwhile, nearly 500 miles away in Philadelphia, my brother Derek was at lunch. I didn't know any of this at the time. I pieced it together later from screenshots that started circulating online, shared by people who had been at that restaurant. Derek had taken some coworkers to a nice spot in Rittenhouse Square, the kind of place where you make a reservation 6 weeks out. His colleague, a guy named Trevor, glanced up from his menu. "Hey, isn't your sister a teacher? I saw something online this morning about a big national awards ceremony tonight." Derek waved it off. "Oh, that? It's like a teacher appreciation thing. You know how those go, everyone gets a plaque. It's sweet." Another coworker, a woman named Casey Briggs, looked skeptical. "National Teacher of the Year sounds pretty significant." Derek laughed. "Come on. It's not exactly a Nobel Prize. She's a good teacher, I'm sure, but let's be real. If she had bigger ambitions, she wouldn't have plateaued at a $54,000 salary grading papers for 8th graders." Table went quiet. Casey Briggs didn't say much. But what Derek didn't know was that Casey, before going into corporate consulting, had spent 4 years as an education correspondent for the Philadelphia Inquirer. She still had every contact she'd ever made. And she had her phone out. Some people build their own trap with their words. They just don't realize it until it's already sprung. That evening, March 22nd, 7:02 p.m. Eastern Time, The Mitchell family arrived at Maison Bleu, a French restaurant in downtown Philadelphia that Derek had booked for the occasion. White tablecloths. A bottle of champagne sweating in a silver ice bucket. The best table windowside where you could watch the city lights come on. Derek raised his glass before anyone even looked at a menu. "To new chapters," he said, grinning. "And real success." Mom laughed. Dad clinked glasses and leaned back in his chair like a man who had figured life out. "This is how you celebrate," Dad said. "Properly. With something that means something." Kayla, Derek's girlfriend, the one who'd said something kind at that Sunday dinner, stayed quiet. She scrolled her phone under the table, jaw set. Something on her face looked like she was waiting for something to happen. "Isn't Sarah's thing going on right now?" Mom asked, checking her watch. "Probably just wrapping up." Derek sipped his champagne. "I'm sure it was lovely." Dad chuckled. Certificate, handshake, little speech about the importance of good educators. Good for her. Kayla put her phone face down on the table. Said nothing. Back in Washington, D.C., the lights in the grand ballroom were dimming. 2,400 people found their seats. Cameras rolled into position. A production assistant touched my elbow backstage. "Ms. Mitchell, you'll enter from stage right when they call your name. Just follow the spotlight." I nodded. Through a gap in the curtain I could see Grandma Ruth in the second row, right behind a placard that read Guest of Honor. She wore her best navy blazer. Pearl earrings Grandpa had given her on their 40th anniversary. Her eyes were already wet. The Secretary of Education stepped to the podium. A hush fell over 2,400 people. "Good evening. Tonight we are here to honor the finest educators in this country. Teachers who go beyond the curriculum, who see potential where others see problems, who change the trajectory of a child's entire life." My phone buzzed in my clutch. One last text from Grandma Ruth. "I am so proud of you. Your family is about to see what I have always known. The whole country is about to meet my Sarah." Blue heart. The whole country. C-SPAN was live. PBS had a camera crew. NBC education desk. Every major education outlet with press passes. And in Philadelphia, my family was eating French food and toasting to the people they considered successful. I closed my eyes and took one full breath. Whatever happened next, I had earned my place on that stage. Not because of anyone's approval. Not because of money or status or what my family thought of my career. 'Cause I had shown up every single day for 9 years for kids who needed someone in their corner. My name was called. I stepped into the light. "Before we announce our final results," the secretary said, "each finalist will hear from a former student whose life they touched. Please welcome to the stage Mr. Darius Webb." My knees almost buckled. Darius. Little Darius Webb, who used to sit in the back corner of my classroom with duct tape on his sneakers and a look in his eyes like he'd already decided the world wasn't for him. Who turned in homework on notebook paper torn from his sister's spiral. Who told me once, completely matter of fact, that he didn't really expect to make it past 25. The man walking to that microphone was not little anymore. Darius Webb stood 6 feet 2 inches in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. A lanyard around his neck. 26, he was a second-year graduate student in biomedical engineering at MIT. He gripped the sides of the podium and looked directly at me. "When I was 15, he began, his voice steady, controlled, "I was couch surfing between relatives. My mom was dealing with some things. I was failing 4 classes. I had already mentally checked out of everything, school, the future, all of it." He paused. "Then I walked into Ms. Mitchell's English class. The room was absolutely still. She noticed things I never told anyone. That I was hungry. That I wore the same hoodie 4 days straight. That I flinched when voices got raised." He stopped for a second. Pressed his lips together. "She never announced it. never made me feel like a charity case or a project. She just helped. His voice cracked just slightly. She kept granola bars in her desk drawer. She drove me to a scholarship interview when I had no other way to get there. She spent 6 weeks after school helping me pull my GPA up from a 1.4 to a 2.8. When I got accepted to Ohio State, Ms. Mitchell was the first person I called. Not because she was my teacher. He looked out at the audience. Because she was the first adult who ever acted like my life was worth fighting for. I'm at MIT today because of her. And I'm standing here tonight because she deserves to know that. The room rose. All 2,400 people. On their feet. The sound hit me like a wave and I could not hold it together anymore. I just stood there with tears running down my face, watching this young man I had believed in, who had become exactly who I always knew he could be. The applause finally settled. The Secretary of Education returned to the podium with a cream envelope in his hands. The selection committee has reviewed nominations from across all 50 states. These 5 finalists represent the absolute best of what American education can be. He broke the seal. The 2023 National Teacher of the Year is... Silence. All of it. Every camera, every breath, every heartbeat. Sarah Mitchell. Riverside Middle School. Cincinnati, Ohio. The room exploded. I didn't move for a solid 3 seconds. Lily had to physically grab my arm and push me forward. Go. 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 The walk to that stage felt like floating. Lights blurring at the edges. 2,400 strangers on their feet. Darius front row, clapping with everything he had, tears streaming openly. Our eyes met. He mouthed 2 words. Thank you. No, Darius. Thank you. For becoming proof that what I do matters. The secretary handed me a crystal award, heavy, elegant, catching the light from every camera in that room. Your grandmother, he leaned in quietly, has been telling everyone you'd win for 3 months straight. She's a force of nature. I looked out and found Grandma Ruth in the second row. She was crying so hard she was barely breathing, hands pressed together, face turned up, absolutely glowing. I had never once seen my grandmother cry before that night. On the bottom of every screen, a cheer-in appeared. Breaking, Cincinnati teacher Sarah Mitchell named 2023 National Teacher of the Year, nominated by legendary educator Ruth Calloway. Millions of Americans saw that headline, including 4 people in a Philadelphia French restaurant who had just ordered dessert. Robert Mitchell, my dad, reached for his phone the way he always did. Out of habit, checking markets, skimming headlines, staying plugged into the world he considered important. Push notifications sat at the top of his screen. Breaking, Ohio teacher wins prestigious National Teaching Award, ceremony in D.C. He almost scrolled past it. Thousands of teachers in Ohio. What were the odds? Then he saw the photo. His hand went completely still. A woman on stage, shaking hands with a man in a dark suit, against a backdrop that read National Teacher of the Year 2023. The woman was his daughter. Robert. Mom noticed his face. What happened? Is it the market? He couldn't find words. He just held out the phone. Mom took it. Squinted. Her face drained of color. That's Sarah. What? Derek grabbed for the phone. His champagne glass tilted. Red wine spread across the white tablecloth in a slow, silent bloom. No, he said. That can't. She said it was just a small. The Secretary of Education. Dad's voice was barely above a whisper. She's shaking hands with the Secretary of Education. Kayla leaned over slowly and looked at the screen. Her expression was impossible to read. She picked up her own phone, found the C-SPAN livestream, and turned up the volume just enough. Darius Webb's voice came through the speaker. She was the first adult who ever acted like my life was worth fighting for. Oh my God. Derek's voice had gone flat. This is actually national television. PBS, Kayla said quietly. C-SPAN too. And NBC has a crew there. The restaurant moved around them like nothing had changed. Waiters glided past. Couple laughed at the next table. Soft jazz played overhead. The Mitchell family sat completely frozen in the middle of all of it. A woman at the bar had been watching the broadcast on her phone. She looked over. Recognized something. She walked toward their table. "Excuse me, I'm so sorry to bother you, but are you by any chance Sarah Mitchell's family?" She pointed at the TV mounted in the corner. They just cut to a wider shot. "I saw you looking at your phone and I thought you must be so proud." Dad attempted a smile. "Yes, very proud." The woman's brow furrowed slightly. "Oh, how wonderful. Were you watching from home? I know Washington's not that close for everyone." "We couldn't get flights," Mom said quickly. "Flights?" The woman looked confused. "I mean, it's not even a 10-hour drive. My daughter drove to DC from Columbus just last month." "It was a scheduling thing," Derek cut in. The woman looked at each of them. The half-eaten meals. The spilled wine. The body language of people who'd just been caught. "Oh," she said. Simply. Quietly. "I see." She walked away without another word. Table was silent for a long time. Then Derek picked up his phone and opened Instagram. His fingers moved fast. "So proud of my incredible sister Sarah. Wishing we could have been there in person tonight. Family always comes first. Hashtag National Teacher of the Year, hashtag Proud Brother." He added a screenshot from the broadcast. Posted. Comments came in within seconds. "Congratulations to your sister. Teachers are heroes. This is so sweet of you to share. Your family must be so proud." Derek exhaled. Managed. Contained. Then a new comment appeared. Casey Briggs. His coworker from lunch. "That's funny. At lunch today you called it a teacher appreciation thing and said Sarah's career had a ceiling. I was sitting right across from you. Which is it?" Two other people from that same lunch liked Casey's comment within the minute. One added, "Can confirm." Word to listen to. Derek's stomach dropped. He deleted the post. But screenshots had already been taken. Someone had already shared it to Twitter. Someone else was writing a thread. His phone buzzed. A text from his boss. "Hey, heads up, some clients saw the thing online. The non-profit account we're pitching next month follows your sister's school on social. Might want to have a conversation." Derek stared at the message. Kayla, across the table, put her phone in her purse, folded her napkin, and set it on the table. She looked at Derek for a long moment. Then she said quietly, "I told you." She said nothing else. She didn't need to. My hotel room was quiet. The ceremony had been over for hours. The reception, the photos, the handshakes, the champagne, all of it blurring together in a warm golden haze. It was past midnight. I sat on the edge of the bed. Crystal trophy on the nightstand, catching the glow of the city through the window. Phone face down on the comforter. I already knew they were trying to reach me. 62 missed calls from Dad. 38 from Mom. 19 from Derek. Not one of them got through. A soft knock. Grandma Ruth stood in the hallway in her hotel robe, eyes still red, a small smile on her face. "Can I come in?" We sat together by the window, looking out at the Washington Monument lit up against the dark sky. For a while, neither of us said anything. It was the most comfortable silence I'd felt in years. "Do you want to call them?" she finally asked. I shook my head. "Not tonight." "That's your right, sweetheart." I looked at her. "Did you know it would happen? That they'd see it?" She was quiet for a moment. "I knew the broadcast would reach them." What they chose to feel about it, that was always going to be up to them. She took my hand. Sarah, I didn't put this in motion to punish your family. I did it to honor you. Whatever they're sitting with tonight, that's the weight of their own choices. Not yours. Tears finally came. I just wanted them to show up once, Grandma. Just once. I know. She pulled me close. Some people can only see value once the world holds up a mirror. That's their limitation. She pressed a kiss to my temple. Not yours. For the first time in as long as I could remember, I didn't need anyone else's validation. I already had mine. The fallout kept going for weeks. My dad walked into his Thursday morning golf game at Lakeview Country Club. 4 guys he'd known for 25 years. Robert! His buddy Frank called out from the cart path. How's our celebrity dad holding up? The others laughed. Not with him. I heard you were across town celebrating Derek when Sarah was on C-SPAN, another guy said, pulling on his glove. That's quite a choice, Rich. Dad's jaw tightened. We had a prior commitment to celebrate your son's promotion, while your daughter was shaking hands with a cabinet member. On national television. Frank shook his head slowly. Hell of a trade-off. Mom didn't fare better at her weekly coffee group. 3 women who'd known her for 15 years spent the first half hour talking about my speech. When Mom mentioned they'd watched from home, one of her friends looked genuinely confused. But Linda, Cincinnati to D.C. is 8 hours by car tops. Your husband drives to Chicago for golf tournaments. The silence that followed was worse than anything anyone could have said out loud. And Derek's situation was the most complicated. The screenshots spread. Business forums and education Twitter had opinions. A local news blog ran a small item. Philadelphia consultants' dismissive comments about teacher sister go viral. On Monday, Derek was quietly reassigned off the nonprofit pitch he'd been leading for 6 weeks. His supervisor was careful with the language, but the message was clear. Reputation isn't just about what you accomplish. It's about who people believe you are when the lights are off. Sometimes consequences just take a few weeks to show up at your door. 2 weeks later, I agreed to dinner at my parents' house. Not because I'd forgiven everything. 'Cause I was ready. The house looked the same. Same brick front. Same seasonal wreath on the door Mom always swapped out. Same driveway where I learned to ride a bike. Inside, everything felt different. Dad was in his chair. Mom on the sofa. Derek on the love seat, elbows on knees, looking at the floor. Sarah. Dad cleared his throat. We owe you a conversation. I stayed standing. Okay. We didn't know it was going to be what it was. Dad. Kept my voice level. I sent you a PDF. With a government seal. That said national. That named the Secretary of Education. That said C-SPAN broadcast. I looked at each of them. Which part of that reads like a small ceremony? Mom twisted her hands together. We should have looked more carefully. You looked at it. I kept my voice calm. Not cold. Just honest. You all read it. You made a choice. That's different than a mistake. Derek looked up. Sarah, I'm sorry for what I said at lunch. With my coworkers. I didn't know it would. It doesn't matter whether it got screenshotted. I cut him off gently. You meant it either way. He had no answer for that. Mom was the one who finally broke the silence. She looked at her hands and said quietly, We should have been there, Sarah. I know that. I stood there in my childhood living room, in the house where my achievements went in a drawer and his went on the wall, and I felt something I hadn't expected. Not anger. Not vindication. Just clarity. I'm not cutting you out of my life, I said. But things are going to be different going forward. I'm done spending my energy trying to earn my place in this family. I'm done apologizing for the career I chose, the apartment I live in, the life I've built. Dad's chin went up. We never asked you to. You didn't have to ask. My voice was steady. Steady as it had ever been. It was in every comment, every dinner, every moment where my work got waved off so we could talk about Derek's bonus. Mom's eyes filled. We love you, Sarah. I know you do. In your way. I took a breath. But love without respect isn't enough. Not anymore. I picked up my coat. From now on, I'll show up when I feel welcomed. I'll answer calls when I'm ready. I'll come to dinners where I'm treated like my life is worth something. I paused at the doorway. I hope you can do that. Genuinely. But if you can't, I'm going to be okay either way. I've already built something real. Something that matters. With or without your blessing. I stepped out into the cool March air. The door clicked shut softly behind me. I didn't look back. 6 months later. Late August came to Cincinnati the way it always does. Heavy and golden, the kind of heat that softens everything at the edges. Trees on my block were still full and green, and the new school year was just weeks away from starting again. I was standing in the kitchen of my new place, a 2-bedroom in a brownstone, sunny, real mine, with lesson plans spread on the table and coffee steaming beside me. The award money had made the down payment possible. The apartment I grew up being embarrassed about was finally behind me. On the wall, a framed photograph from Washington. Grandma Ruth and me, arms around each other, both of us crying and laughing at the exact same time. My phone buzzed. Darius. Ms. Mitchell. I matched into pediatric surgery at Johns Hopkins. Full funding. I wanted you to know before I told anyone else. I set my coffee down very carefully. Darius. I typed back, barely able to see through the blur. I am so incredibly proud of you. Couldn't have done it without you. I sat with that for a long moment. Pride, purpose, the kind of satisfaction that no salary in the world can buy. My calendar showed a keynote at the National Education Association conference in 2 weeks. 4,000 teachers from across the country coming to hear me speak about staying grounded in work that matters. Back in May, I had stood in the rose garden of the White House. The president shook my hand and said, "Thank you for what you do every day." I thought about my father calling my career small time. I thought about the 9-year-old version of me whose report card went straight into a drawer. And I smiled. My family still called sometimes. Mom more than Dad. Derek occasionally. I answered when I felt ready. That was the difference. I no longer waited by the phone hoping someone would finally make me feel enough. I already was. On my kitchen table sat a letter from the Department of Education. They wanted to produce a short documentary about Grandma Ruth and me. 2 generations of educators. A legacy. And beside it, a small envelope. Cream-colored. No return address. But I recognized the handwriting. Dad's. I opened it slowly. Sarah. I spent a lot of years measuring the wrong things. I was wrong about what matters. I was wrong about you. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I just needed you to know I finally see it. Dad. 6 months ago, this letter would have sent me straight to my car, driving over there, rebuilding every bridge before the ink was dry. Now I felt something different. Something quieter. Not anger. Not vindication. Peace. I would respond. When I was ready. On my terms. Outside my window, the sunflowers in the neighbor's yard were turning toward the light. New season. New chapter. I thought about that night in that Philadelphia restaurant. My dad's face going pale over his phone screen. Calls flooding in. The moment the people I'd spent my whole life trying to impress finally saw me. But here's what I know now, standing on the other side of it. I didn't need that moment for myself. I already knew my worth long before the world pointed it out to them. My grandmother once told me that the best teachers don't teach subjects. They teach students. They see potential where others see problems. They plant seeds that bloom long after anyone's watching. She'd been teaching me that my whole life. Not just how to be an educator. How to be myself. And that, honestly, was the only lesson that ever really mattered. Here's what I want to leave you with if you've stayed with me this long. Your worth is not decided by the people who refuse to see it. Find the ones who do, and hold on to them like they're everything. 'Cause they are. Walking away from people who diminish you isn't giving up. Sometimes it's the most powerful move you can make. Boundaries aren't walls, they're the foundation of relationships that actually work. And the best kind of success? It's not loud. It's not flashy. It's waking up knowing your life meant something to someone. That's it. That's the whole thing. If any part of this hit home for you, I really do want to hear it. Drop a comment below and subscribe the channel. Have you ever had a moment where you finally chose yourself over someone else's expectations? I read every single one. And if you want more stories like this, there's a video in the description I think you'll love. Thanks for staying until the end. I'll see you in the next one.